Check. Hey, Sarah. Oh, it's okay. All right, we don't need a mic. Jimmy's gonna sing us a little tune. Okay, so I wanted to get the conversation started. Just the first question that I had is just if you could talk about Nicholas about how Undervolt started, and Jimmy also about how you became involved with Undervolt. And my question was, did everyone who was involved kind of feel the same need for this distribution method of like online distribution? Were there everybody kind of like, that's what we want, that's what we need?
Well, so the project kind of started coming together in September of last year when I had contacted Yoshi about something completely different, and we were kind of working on something totally separate from this, and then he was like, I'm actually thinking about starting this experimental video art label, and I need some help with it. And I was like, that sounds great, that sounds really cool. And he was like, I'm thinking of these people, and I was like, all those people sound great. So then it became kind of a series of a couple of months workshopping what would be the best options and what would be the best ways of trying to bring these people together and distribute their work. And the main kind of point that we wanted to kind of bring to the table, or the main kind of difference that we wanted to separate from this project and other projects, is being able to kind of name a fair price for distributing these works. So that was like a very, very important thing for us very early on. And it had kind of been bubbling up in either with like other people that were interested in the project and other artists that we wanted to bring in. And basically it was just coming out of this frustration that there was a lot of people in this experimental video art community that wanted to distribute their works but didn't want to also limit the distribution of their works to like rental-only policies that are established by places like EAI or Video Data Bank or Lux overseas. So we said, well, yeah, let's not do a rental-based model. Let's do a purchase-to-own model for a very small price. And that was kind of how the project emerged, was out of that. And we looked at a lot of different options for what people were doing, a lot of different options for what was needed, and kind of arrived at Undervolt as a solution or kind of answer to that. But the second part of that question about like figuring out consensus and figuring out ways of like, if everybody was kind of at an equal playing field at the same time. The brilliant thing about Undervolt is like each one of us kind of comes from a different perspective. And Johnny comes from kind of West Coast screening alternative festival perspective. Yoshi comes from like a very prolific, very analog, very crazy, like devotional video kind of aesthetic. And it's weird, in this situation I kind of play more of the straight man, which is like funny to me, but also is kind of like works well within the project. So we kind of have like, we work in this nice triangle of not actually operating in consensus all the time. And there's like artists that Yoshi wants to bring in, and that I want to bring in, and that Johnny wants to bring in, and all of us kind of negotiate together on timing and schedules and cycles and stuff like that. So, and how did you get involved, Jerry?
Well, Yoshi's a friend of mine, and we've been showing together through curated exhibitions and stuff for 4 or 5 years. We were in a magazine a while back, this Francesca Gavin wrote an article that the two of us were in, and I hung out with him a little bit in New York and just introduced myself. And I had been talking to him about some of these ideas that were brewing around. Me and him and my friend Alan Cordell were sort of like kicking around the idea of starting a label, but it didn't work out. So I was super excited when I heard that these guys had actually like got this thing off the ground. And so that started a conversation with releasing stuff.
Yeah, I think a lot of it also came out of that Yoshi was involved in like DVD-based projects before, like subscription-based zines, basically, that were a collection of videos that were on a DVD, and that seemed kind of silly. And now it was kind of like, well, we don't need to have something material like a DVD. We can just do this all online.
There's that thing called that they're trying to sell like digital editions of art. Sedition.
Yeah.
So Sedition had emailed me about releasing work with them, and I think had gotten in touch with Yoshi, and we were sort of talking to one another about whether or not we were going to do it. And I had been talking to them, and I was like getting prepared to release with them. Mm-hmm. But like then at the same time, got a little weird, and I started feeling like I didn't like where they were going, and I didn't like the like that they were trying to grow as fast as possible, get as big as possible, become as commercial. They were sort of like, let's seem like we're like this little like art thing, and then let's go like international as big as we can, as fast as we can. And so I actually didn't release with them. And I think Yoshi had it. I don't know if he did or not, but anyway, like so I feel like this label is sort of smarter, much smarter, and coming from a different perspective that's more aligned with what I'm interested in terms of like putting out my work, I guess.
Okay. Well, I guess in terms of that, like going, like in terms of distribution and everything. So I'm wondering, it seems like this type, like the style, or I guess, like kind of, the style of video that you guys are distributing right now seems incredibly relevant to the way in which we can view videos today. So like, I kept popping open like my cell phone the whole time, like maybe taking like screen caps or something of the videos. And I'm wondering what you guys think about that, just in terms of like the style that you're working in.
It's actually something that I find a point of contention with the whole Undervolt right now. I think that a lot of the video work that we're showing is a little bit too similar. It's a lot of video work that I like a lot, but I think that there's a lot of similarities in methodologies and practices and kind of equipment and gear that run throughout the work that we're showing, which is not to say that's not disparaging the work by any means. But I think that going forward, what we're kind of going to become more interested in is like tapping into the different things that we're all interested in separately. So like, for instance, all of us have started talking about like, well, what about like non-art video but experimental video, like experimental documentary or like experimental narrative, or stuff that's not necessarily circulating in kind of art venues but also circulating in a larger experimental festival circuit in general. So that's something like that we definitely want to do moving forward. But I don't know if that doesn't necessarily answer your question. But just in terms of thinking about the community that we're representing, we want to kind of expand that community and have more overlap between different kind of sectors within experimental video.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess following up with that, like, so it seems as though the label kind of runs on this more like a sort of like a music, like indie label kind of format. And in thinking about that, I'm just wondering like what room there is for, I mean, you're talking about like the work having like a sort of like cohesiveness to it, just because of the social like network or like your group of your peers. Like what room do you find for like hidden gems in that sense right now, or like things, just
like the underground aspect of it, is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we were kind of talking about this a little bit before, and I think one way that we want to do that is that I think somewhere in the next year we're probably going to open up the platform a little bit more and think about ways in which people can use the site as like somewhat of a hosting site to think about, if someone's interested in participating in the conversation, that they can kind of make their own page on Undervolt or something like that. It's kind of weird because it's like we don't want to be like a servicing platform, and we don't want to be like productizing the label for like other people, but we also want to invite the conversation in. And I think like the best way that we can do that is just being like gentle people to talk to. Like we're we try to pride ourselves on being very accessible. So I think that the way that we do that is by doing public events like this and getting people interested in the work and kind of what we're interested in doing in the distribution platform, and hoping that in that someone is going to approach us or email us or just kind of inquire about how do they get involved and how do they participate in the conversation more. And I think through that, it's, in my experience, it's kind of like how that happens organically anyways. So hopefully that'll be a way of like getting those hidden gems or being able to tap into audiences that we don't know about yet. So,
I had a question about Jimmy touched on a little bit about why he went with Undervolt as opposed to this other label, and I guess my question was in the current artist to gallery relationship, I guess, artist to gallery to public relationship. Do you think there's something subversive about selling these works for such a low price to a nearly unlimited audience across the internet? I mean, all the works are $5 or $7, right? Like, is there anything over $7? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so very, very affordable.
Jimmy, why did you choose us?
I don't think it's subversive. I mean, I just see it from a different perspective, and I just feel like it's just like someone, like a tape or vinyl label putting out really interesting work that maybe is the group of artists that the people who run that label choose to represent and try to work with distros. Those labels those musicians could play galleries. Those people could tap into fine art in their own tributaries, but I just think that the label model is one in which a tremendous amount of interesting and important music, art, and if you take the label and kind of break it open and think about something like Openspace or something like Sophia Jacobs or you guys' bookstore, I mean, those are all kind of like a label in a way. I mean, like, I think that the price point has a relationship to the aesthetic and the community, and that place is important so that it's accessible to like young or other artists, to people who might not have a whole lot of money, but it also gives it a value. It says like this has some value.
Right, you're not giving it away for free.
And I think it's just like, to me, I mean, I know a lot of musicians that I know that sell, make a tape or something and sell it for $5 or $6, but they spend a lot of time working on it. And I think it's a similar amount of value of work of time than these pieces. So I just don't see like why. To me, it's just not strange. It just makes sense. Yeah. It's like, yes, of course, like. To speak to the kind of like open up the conversation about like running the label, to me, I mean, I don't know if it'll become a social platform where someone can like log in and then they have their website and sell their stuff and it's like a marketplace. Okay, I don't know, but right now it's a label with like that reps certain like artists, but it's also inspiring. Hopefully, I mean, like it's transparent. You guys are pretty open. Like people can email you directly. They know who run it. It's not this massive like thing. It's not like you're selling ads. So like it's a model, and you're developing a model that then someone can look at and go, I can do this with my friends in like Texas or like Kentucky or the video artists I know. I mean, it's a proof of concept as much. Now, you said like you can do this,
yeah.
And I think it's a slightly different tweak on like EAI or something like that. Last piece, EAI is also electronic arts intermix. Like they're releasing new artists all the time, but it's a very narrow field. So I think you guys are kind of re-upping. Like, I don't know, besides you guys, like, who's kind of, like, pulling up this pool of artists that a lot of the people you guys are showing. So I just think it's important, like, someone needed to take that step and go, like, hey, let's get together, let's do this, let's give these pool of artists a voice, another way to have a voice, And, someone else is going to do it, it's, like, important to keep it going.
Yeah, I just think that, as we were talking about earlier, in terms of like an artist's identity and kind of, I guess a lot of the video works that we were talking earlier, I mean, there is like a very strong lineage that is tied with, the history of, video, whether it's, Stan Brakhage back in the 70s, but then, to the kind of like Fourth Thunder guys, in Providence, and how that they kind of established this underground aspect in and of themselves and kind of set a standard in a way. And it's like you guys are almost like aligning yourselves with them in the sense, not that you're partnering up with them or anybody means, but you're kind of like following this tradition that is very important to the identity of the artists themselves, and also just aligning yourself. I mean, the $5 price range I think is so fascinating,
So what Neil was talking, we had a conversation earlier. Basically, what I was saying was that, like, 15 years ago when I was sort of like coming up as an artist, some of the people that really influenced me for some of the was like the Providence scene, like Chippendale, like Airborne Radar, and those guys. And some of those guys, like Brian Chippendale's gone on and done gallery exhibitions and sells work and is rep by galleries and shows in Berlin and whatever. But like at the same time, he still can sell. You can still go to a show and maybe buy a silkscreen of his for $5 at a table. That's part of his identity, and that's part of what makes him the artist that he is. And I feel like, at least I'll speak for myself, like coming up through this scene in Baltimore and putting on my own shows and showing my videos in warehouses and touring them with bands and stuff, like that piece is really important to me. Like, it's part of who I am as an artist. So the idea that someone would say, no, now that we can sell one of your videos, we can sell 3 of them for $1,000, you can't sell that one for $5. It's like, fuck you. Yeah. Don't tell me that. Totally. You don't have anything, like, that has nothing to do with you. And if you don't like that, then you don't like who I am or where I'm coming from as a work. That's how I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that something that's really important to the group in general is that we all kind of come from shared understanding and shared history in some ways of experimental cinema, DIY cinema, rooftop cinema or whatever, just trying to basically like doing it yourself or like doing it together and just kind of pulling resources together. And in a lot of ways, the 3 of us felt like this is going to happen. Like already there's models and markets that are being developed that are doing digital distribution in one way, direct download based art objects or whatever. Sedition is one, Artsy is another. There's about a handful of them that you can kind of pluck out of the sky. And we were kind of sitting there when Yoshi first approached me. I was kind of like, yeah, but there's not one that's run by artists. There's not like kind of a label or like a platform or a site or anything like that is working in the expressed interest of the artists from an artist perspective. So that was something that we really felt like needed to happen as a way of not only bringing up the people that we wanted to work with and bringing up this kind of community of artists that we felt whose work was like slightly underrepresented or else like was not getting the same kind of like wider distribution or this being able to be valued the same way as like individual collection or something that was at EAI. So we wanted to make sure that we could kind of provide that platform ourselves. The other kind of important aspect of that though was that we always it was always in the back of our mind, it's like when you do release stuff for free, there is a certain kind of like cultural cachet that comes with being able to just open things up and make sure that things are free and accessible and that does in its own way develop a network, and that does in its own way develop a community and an audience and a kind of culture around openness. And I think that we're still trying to struggle in some ways to have one foot in that and then also one foot in this small price range market. So I think that in my personal opinion, the way of negotiating that is doing events like this, where the event is free and we are showing all this work, and we're still wanting to cultivate that kind of community and culture while still maintaining that the site has direct download options and stuff like that. So I think that a way of kind of trying to do both at the same time is something that we want to make sure that we can maintain.
Yeah. Okay. So I think a lot of that was kind of answered for me, or my question was answered. But so in a way, like I'm starting to understand how this might differentiate from something like a massive video distribution company. So something like like Criterion or Weinstein Group or something. But I'm still curious about if like a larger institution kind of contacted you about getting licensing for a screening or something, right. How do you deal with that when they're like perhaps aggressive about it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that like the short answer is like just pay for the collections, right, and then screen them. With the stipulation that you're not going to charge for the screening. I mean, like we actually have like these documents behind the scene that's like because we have thought about this a little bit, so we have some like end user, or it's that, I hate that term, like end user license agreement, but we do have like license agreements that we want to do for like screenings that happen at bigger institutions. Like we're planning on that stuff in the summer, and we do have documents that's like, okay, you know, all you have to do is just purchase the collections and then you can screen them, but there's like a certain amount of caveats that come with that, or we ask that these caveats be made. You know, we don't want to force or strong arm anybody really in, you know, playing by our rules, because I think that that's like, because rules are meant to be broken anyways, but yeah, so I think that's like the way that we negotiate that. That being said, one thing that I did want to talk about in terms of like thinking about going forward and thinking about opening up like this idea of hidden gems is that one model that we are really interested in doing is more like kind of like a CSA, like subscription-based model. So there's a lot of like, so kind of my artistic upbringing was in Chicago, and there's a lot of interest in CSA-like models or co-op-based models for distributing art. And something that we want to try to roll out like in the summer or within the year is like doing a subscription-based model that's like an institution can subscribe to, you know, a year's worth of programming in Undervolt for like $50, you know, which is to an institution, not very much. Or even to individuals, you know, it's like, okay, you'll get a year's worth of programming, which is, you know, we try to release once a month, but we're going to start releasing twice a month. So that's like over 12 hours of videos, let's say, for like $50, right? So trying to like create that kind of model so that it's like not only generating kind of revenue to fund artists to like produce new works, exclusive works through Undervolt, but it's also to say like you don't know what you're going to get. So you might get something, you might get another collection by Yoshi who like, you know, has a little bit of like sway in the community, or not sway, but like is a name within the community, or you might get, you know, this kid from Kansas who has like never shown anything before anywhere, you know. So it's like we kind of like are really interested in being able to say, if you have the subscription model, you're going to get a whole variety of different things. So that's definitely one way where we want to maintain getting this like diamond in the roughs, and it's not just like, oh, I've seen this person's work on video before, blah blah blah. So,
does anyone have any questions from the audience? They'd like to add?
Yeah. What do you guys like put online, like for free, like as trailers or clips or some of the videos? Like how do you navigate like what's for free so people can like see it, what's for sale?
We have a very open conversation with our artists. We actually just drafted a letter that we sent to all of the artists that we represent right now to be like, help us make this better, and you know, what do you want to release for free? What do you want us to show? What do you want us to like have exclusive for direct download only? So we just ask. We just try to be open, and it's a very kind of transparent process where we don't want to say like, okay, now we're doing this, and you have to abide by these rules or these license agreements or whatever. So that's basically the way that we do it. We just ask what the artist is interested in.
It sounds like they're going to start streaming like pieces of the releases, but not the whole thing.
Yeah, so I think that right now what we would like to do is like we do have trailers for all of the collections that we have online available, but they're not very long. They're like maybe 2 minutes at most. And some of our artists have like kind of got back to us and they're like, well, I put in all this work on this collection of videos, but only like 10 people have seen it, or whatever. Only a small amount of people have seen it. So I think our coming back and being like, okay, cool, so what do you want to show online? What do you want to like have viewable, and then what do you want to have that's only for download? So
would you just have like a low res, like you could do low res full piece, and then if they want to download the HD for
yeah, that's the model that we have right now. So the trailers that are on the site are like a little bit lower resolution. They're not anywhere above 720p, but actually like one thing that we're hoping to do by the end of the year is start releasing things in 4K, which would like blow my mind. But yeah, so then the direct download is like incrementally higher resolution, the fullest resolution that we can do.
Lorenzo, did you have a question?
Sure. So does Undervolt have any opposition to these works being shown publicly alongside other videos not on the label, or potentially 16mm more traditional avant-garde? And I mean, I I think it's great that you can show them publicly once you purchase individual works or maybe a program's work. So I just lost my train of thought, so maybe we'll just go to that question.
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, we're not averse to that. I think that the label's not interested in being like, if you show an Undervolt artist, they can only be showed with other Undervolt artists. That seems a little bit ludicrous in my opinion. I think that the only, again, one of like the caveats that we asked is like that this work is distributed through, it's just as like the same in other festival organizations. It's like, usually we'll say like, can you screen this copy that has like the Undervolt title at the beginning, and then at the end of it, it'll say like, to see more works, go to Undervolt, something like that. So, yeah, I don't think that we're averse to that at all.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just came back. So, is it a stipulation that the screenings are free? Because I run a series in Baltimore called Silent Scene. We basically are surviving at this point on charging some fee.
Yeah.
I mean, because like EAI or these larger institutions, I mean, I find these prices slightly on the there's a little too much sometimes. So for most of these screenings, we have to charge somewhat of a fee, but most of it usually goes back to the artist anyway. So, as an alternative to the free model, what about when the works are shown publicly, there is a fee that goes back to the artist? Do you have any kind of settlement?
I think Nick was sort of just putting out a loose idea of how things could go down in one situation, but I think from my interactions with these guys and just in general, I think it's pretty open. I think if the Harvard film, I think like different situations could lead to different results, and I've been saying like we should try to sell, or it would be cool to try, and these guys are on this already. Try to sell institutional copies to colleges, and that's not just because we can go to colleges for hundreds of dollars, but also because the library systems have a really specific way that they have to catalog things. Like they're not like some like Hopkins Library, for example. Like I don't know. I think if we were like you just download the file, they'd be like. They need it's like there's a physical thing, and has the numbers written on it, there's a back. So it's like there's a reason why like institutions do treat media in a certain way, and I think so. And if anyone emailed me and was just like, hey, I want to show like one of the videos, I guess I would probably mention it to you guys, but I don't think like anyone would. The artist on your label can show these works wherever they want, anytime, in whatever situation. Yeah. I think it's pretty open.
Yeah, and I think like following up on that, I think that our caveat is like we would want to be like, okay, so how much are you charging, and then like does that go? How do we get that to the artist as best as we can? I think that would just be the way that we would do it, and we wouldn't be like, no, you can't show it. We would just like again, we're like really interested in having radical transparency, so we want to make sure that all of the process is open and that the artists are aware of their work being shown, so that they can kind of list it in their own kind of personal documents or CVs or whatever. But then also make sure that like whatever cut from that you want to distribute back outwards goes to the artist. So,
if you guys are interested, we gotta wrap things up. But if you guys are interested, definitely talk to Jimmy and Nicholas after this is over, which it is now over.
If you have like further questions about any of the stuff or how the way that Undervolt works, you can just email us at info@undervolt.co.
Great. Thank you guys for coming. Stick around for Liz Donadio's workshop if you're interested on how to prepare your digital images for printing. So thanks to Jimmy and Nicholas. Thanks to Nicholas.